This is Mxnzplain. My name is Lebo and Kabelo.
I'm Kabelo, and the two of us decided to begin this journey of just creating spaces for men to reflect on what it means to be a man in the 21st century. Our task is really to journey with men, listen to different stories, but to create an environment where we can all just learn and grow with each other. It's a journey.
Yeah. So if you're interested in mansplaining about their spirituality, their traumas, and all things important about being a man in the 21st century, this is the place for you to come to.
Mxnzplain is for me, for you, it's for all of us. So join in and be part of our journey. Welcome to Mxnzplain. I am Kabelo, and as always, I travel with my brother Lebo and Kabelo. Do you want to greet the humans?
Dumelang, sanbonani, avusheni. Welcome back to Mxnzplain, the show that is for men, about men, talking about issues that have to do with men in our society. And as my friend Kabelo would say, men in the 21st century.
I mean, who else to better address than the ones who are still alive, right?
Exactly.
Look, I think, so when I thought about this topic or this conversation specifically, it's largely a reflection of where I'm finding myself right now, right?
Okay.
Where you hit that point in your life where you realize, I'm about to turn 40. And what does that mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your mind starts thinking about, I'm not getting younger, I'm getting old. And I work in a school, and every year the kids stay the same age.
Yeah.
And I'm getting old.
Yeah.
And the grays are starting to show, the body's starting to look otherwise. And now you're just like, what is happening, right? Am I going through a midlife
what are
crisis?
We talking about exactly?
Oh,
okay. You're doing okay.
I'm warming up. I'm warming up.
Cool.
And I thought to myself, is this a midlife crisis? Am I unsettled because something is shifting in me?
Yeah.
And that's where it came from. And I was just like, actually, I'd like to find out, like, how do different men deal with, I guess, seasonal changes, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a midlife crisis really, in my mind, is a seasonal change, right?
Okay.
It is that point in your life where things are moving and you're realizing that you're coming into a new stage. And when I think of, just growing up as a boy, right? Not even as a boy, your 14th birthday is a big moment. Your 21st birthday, big moment. When you turn 30, big moment. 40 is another one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I think between 25 was probably I'd say like a good time for me when I was 25, because I felt like I was moving in the right direction, right? I could see where I was going. I had high energy levels, opportunities, and things were just starting to show up in a different way. I mean, I already had my first degree, so there was that sense of I've ticked the first box of success nyan, and then when I turned 30, it was another point in my life. I was just like, that's another
What does this mean?
Milestone that was reached. And I think, honestly speaking, I think my 30s have probably been the best time of my life.
Okay.
Just in the sense of feeling more secure in myself, feeling more comfortable in my skin, and also being more accepting of who I am.
Okay.
Right. But now I'm approaching 40 and I'm just like, who the hell am I? Right. I'm just like, what have I achieved? And you start looking back, it's like, what have I been doing with my life?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm finding myself. And that's why I was like, actually, how do we get at it?
Let's talk about this.
Right? Because you are like, getting mid 40.
Yes, sir.
So you must have some experience.
Mid 40s. So I'm 43, turning 44 this year. So at least in my head, what I'm thinking about is like, oh man, I'm going to turn 45 next year. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, man. I don't know if it's, I mean, you specifically said, oh, let's talk about midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Firstly, I don't know what midlife is.
Okay.
Like, do you say midlife and link it back to age, or is it midlife linked back to like lifestyle, or like kind of what you're doing with your life at that point? Because you could be 30 living like a 40-year-old, or you could be 40 living like a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
So what exactly is midlife crisis? So I want us to have a little bit of that conversation. But I am now thinking about like, oh man, I'm gonna be 45. And you're also reminding me that, like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm a little bit older than this guy, you know?
Yeah.
Um, um, so yeah, man. So, so if I talk about myself, I've never attached much importance to age.
Okay.
This is probably the first time I'm going to be like, oh man, this age thing, or like,
Yeah.
it's causing me to pause. And it's one, because of one of the things you mentioned is like you're getting older.
Yeah.
And like now you're like getting older and feeling older. It's like, oh, okay, that 10-kilometer run that used to take me 59 minutes
Now I must take a nap.
is now taking me an hour and 20 minutes. And afterwards I need to go nap.
Yep.
You know, like I can't just, so there's that. But I've never really attached much to age. And I think part of the reason of that is I've always been early in everything that I was doing.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I finished matric and I was the youngest guy in that class. I think I was like 50 and a half or whatever. First job, like I was young. Yeah. So it's never bothered me,
Yeah.
you know? But now, like you say, you go into spaces, you know, you're the old, I go in there and I'm the oldest guy there. It's like, oh, okay. You know? What does it mean? And do I think I'm experiencing or will experience a crisis? I don't know for myself personally, because I mean, what is a midlife crisis? Like, what is it? Like, how does it manifest?
Or maybe
itself?
the term crisis, or even the term midlife crisis, is problematic in itself, right?
Well, I don't know.
That's like
I don't know, right?
the socially accepted
Yeah.
statement when I think we're going through shifts.
Yeah.
So
when you think midlife crisis for yourself as a black man, what is that? Like, what does it look like?
So like when I started off now, I actually thought to myself, maybe the term is not crisis.
Okay.
It's more a seasonal change, right?
Yeah.
It's a change of season for me.
Yeah.
Right. I think there was a change of season when I hit 25. There was a change of season when I hit 30. And now I'm changing into another season.
Okay.
And naturally, there are questions that I'm asking about fulfillment, about purpose, about have I done what I needed to do
Okay.
in my younger years, where, you know, one was slightly more energetic and could achieve more by virtue of the argument of youth, right?
Why do you think one of the things that comes up, because you've said it like thrice already, is achievement? Like, why is achievement a big part?
So I think,
of, like,
so for me,
back?
it's not even achievement in the sense of material achievement, but it's more of, is my life of purpose? Is my life of value? And I think that's become the big question for me, right? Is, have I lived in a way that I've lived out my purpose?
Okay.
Am I living in a way that is meaningful for me, right? And I think that's a big, that's been a huge thing on my mind, right? And I even said, I was chatting to the bishop, that is Steve Moreo, and I was saying to him, I feel like I'm struggling spiritually this year because I'm not what I'm used to, right? I can sense that there's something moving inside of me, but I don't know what it is. And what's interesting is, you know, I think in my mind, I'm like, the way people are responding to my preaching is way more positive than how I'm feeling it's going across.
Okay.
Right? In my mind, I'm just like, I'm not feeling this thing, but people are responding to it differently. And then it hit me that I think a big part of what's happening, and maybe this should be a conversation for one of our episodes. A big thing that's happening for me was, I think I am doing so much feeding, right? So it's like I'm running confirmation classes, I'm running baptism classes, I'm doing people's weddings and running marriage prep, and I'm, you know, technically the spiritual leader or head of a school.
So you're pouring out.
So it's the counseling of people and managing and navigating all of that. So I'm just like, I'm pouring so much out, and I'm not sure much is coming into me, right?
Okay.
And in the process of dealing with that, it was just that consciousness of there's so much happening and shifting. And I see it with a lot of my mates, right? And we're chatting about it. It's like, yo, guys, we're all about to turn 40. Literally, we're all turning 40 in a short space of time. Like in the next 3 years, most of my mates would be will be in our 40s, right? And I think if I looked at the full spectrum of all my friends, in the next 5 years, we're all in our 40s, right? And that's become a conversation, and to say like, yo, what did we do with our 30s?
So wait, so are you saying part of the emptiness, quote unquote, that you're feeling spiritually or in your spiritual walk and your
Yeah.
spiritual responsibilities could be because you are about to turn 40 and therefore could be having a midlife crisis.
I wouldn't put it in those exact words,
Yeah.
but I think there's a correlation,
Okay.
right? Is there's this big milestone that's about to happen, and you begin to to evaluate your life, right?
Okay.
You're looking at, am I working for the right institution? Am I the type of man that I thought I would be at this point in time in my
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
Am I
What's the
showing
answer
up?
to that question? Don't mind me asking.
I haven't really answered a lot of them, and maybe that's why it's a crisis.
Okay.
Is you're asking many questions and there's very few answers, right?
As you were growing up, did you have an idea of who you wanted to be when you turned 40?
I knew that I did. I knew that I wanted to have a life of value and meaning and significance.
Okay.
But I also knew that I didn't want to be poor.
Okay.
There's no nicer way of saying it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was one of them. Like I came back to Bamudi.
No, what on you?
I was like, I need to be well off.
Yeah.
And for me, well off was not even a thing of being like uber wealthy, multi-billionaire or whatever it may be, or millionaire. It was really about being capable of caring for myself, caring for my family,
Okay.
and being able to buy the things that I want
Okay.
or like.
And are you able to do those things as you're about to turn 40?
Yes.
Okay.
But, and maybe that's where the issue is, right? Is I'm also in that weird space of, I'm turning this age, and you start looking at all these material things that we work so hard for and fight for or push for. And you think to yourself, actually, a lot of these things have little value and meaning. Like it's empty,
Okay.
right? That car, that house, you're just like, yeah,
Okay.
they're nice, but you're just like, there's more to life than this, right?
Okay.
And maybe that's where the need to live is beginning, right? It's like, I actually need to do things that make me feel alive, right? I need to do things that energize me. I need to be in conversations and hang around people who make me want to live.
Okay.
Right. And I think that's maybe that's a shift. Is our 30s and our 20s we're working towards like reaching all these goals. And it's like we're meeting targets. It's like you're working in a supermarket, right? We're fighting for targets, we're fighting for shelf space. And then you hit a point and you're like, hold up. What does it mean in the bigger scheme of things?
Okay.
And I think that maybe that's the weirdness of it. Is that reevaluation?
Yeah. So like I'm gonna keep pushing you, right? Because I think this is important because for instance, it sounds like you're saying you are doubtful that you have been living a life of purpose. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Because you're like, now you're questioning it. So then my question is, okay, so then what does a life of purpose look like? Do you have an idea of that? Even if it's like a cursory thing, not well thought through. There must be something that you're thinking.
I think, and I always say, like, for me, it's always been one of those things where it's just like, you know what, when I die, like, what are the things that people are going to remember about me?
Okay.
Right. Will it be things that are positive and great? Will it be things that I would have wanted people to believe or feel that I am?
Yeah.
Or will it be just one of those, he lived and he died?
Okay.
Right. And I think for me, it's always been like, how many lives has my life touched?
Okay.
And was it in a good way? Right. And I think naturally, I know for a fact that I've not been perfect. Right. I've disappointed people. I've hurt people. I've done things that I shouldn't have done.
Okay.
But even within that, I would like to hope that the positive and the life-giving energy that I've given to the world is more than the negative that I've given to the world.
Okay.
And maybe that sounds a bit too philosophical, right? But I think for me, that's a key part of who I want to be.
But you're not answering my question. And my question is, do you think you've been that person up until so have you been living a life of purpose? Yes or no?
I'd say yes.
Okay. So
have I done it perfectly? No.
Okay. Cool.
But have I been living a life of purpose? I really would like to think so.
So where's the crisis part of turning 40 then showing up for you if you think you've lived a life of purpose, and that is so important to you?
Is what does the next phase look like?
Okay.
Right. And I think and
Ah.
a big part of it is because of the type of personality I am,
Yeah.
right? Because for me it was okay, in my 30s, I got the title of Reverend Husband, right? Now in my 40s, I must get the title of Doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In my 50s, I must get the title of Professor,
Right.
or Associate Professor, whatever it may be, right? And when I then evaluate my life, I'm just like, but why must every phase have
Okay.
a new title?
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm realizing that I think for me, and I'll speak for myself, is mapping my life that way is probably one of the things that has given me something to look forward to.
Right.
You know, it's thinking about life as a phase, like, you know, and we deal with it in different phases, right? My early 20s, I was living my good life, you know, dancing, Lebo X, Lebo Linda, you know, cramping and all that beautiful stuff. And that was the 20s for us, right? It was clubbing, having to wear formal shoes to a club because that's how Latinova expected us to look.
Yeah.
You know, that was the early part of my 20s. And we had really good times with very little money, to be honest with you. But there was a lot of quality time and quality conversations that we had even in those spaces, right? And 30s were more, you know, being the professional, being the priest, being the husband, being the dad. And naturally the 40s, I have to continue all of those things because I can't now decide, hey, Molly, I'm turning 40, Axale Papa, you know, you don't knock off from some of these things. But I think for me, it's become what the next phase has to not look better, but the next phase needs to be relevant to the life that I've lived thus far. It can't be seen as regression.
I don't understand that, because if you're saying up until now you've lived a life of purpose, cool. Then the question is, oh, okay, so post 40, is it a crisis because you think the purpose needs to be different, or is it like, oh, I have to continue to achieve things in order to fit with this purpose of mine?
I feel like it must be amplified now because it's just like,
why?
Because I'm not getting younger, bruv.
Okay.
I'm not getting younger.
Yeah.
Waking up in the morning,
So you're
like, I can't jump out of bed anymore.
It sounds to me like you're fearful.
I'm not fear, man.
No, and let me say why. Let me tell you why
explain.
I think fearful, right?
I actually want to know what your transition was.
I'll give you my. So the reason I'm saying it sounds like you're fearful, it's like whenever I hear someone says, "Hey, man, I'm not getting younger," for me, there's a realization that you have less time left on the earth, or also like less time left than what I've lived already.
Yes.
Right. And the minute you hit 40, you're like, I'm probably not going to live another 40 years. So it's natural. My assumption is like naturally there's a fear attached to that. Like, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life now going forward? So then you start questioning, oh, can I continue to do the things I've been doing? And are those, you know what I mean? Like, are those things
also, can I continue and do them the same way I've been doing them?
I mean, yeah, okay.
Or does it call upon a different,
I guess, like physically,
approach?
Yes, you can ask, can I do it the same way? But like, there's a bunch of other stuff probably, right? Where it's like, okay, if I think about most gents that I've spoken to that kind of say they're having a midlife crisis, they start thinking about, oh man, have I actually been living for myself? Like, am I happy?
Yes.
Okay. And what does happiness look like for me? And they look around them, they're like, yeah, look, man, I've built this life, but like, I no longer know myself. So then you start doing things where you're like, okay, what does it mean to know myself? And the guy goes out, like, let me splash out in a new car. And he goes and he buys a car he can't afford. And he's like, okay, right? And or he then goes like, I'm gonna start taking up like an extreme sport. Like a guy's turning 40 or 45 or whatever, he's like, okay, I'm gonna start skydiving. Like, oh, wait, hold on. What's happening there? Right? That for me feels like it comes from a place of fear. So then the question is, okay, like what's driving the fear? Are you feeling like, oh, and if I haven't done these things, then I haven't really lived my life?
No, so I think you said it really well, right? It is that thing of time is running out.
Yes.
And I'm not getting younger.
Yes.
Right. And by virtue of getting old, that means there's certain things that at some point I will not be able to do physically.
Okay.
So what do? We pack it in, right?
Yeah.
Like I look at the past 6 months in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I remember before running Cape Town Marathon, right? And I was saying to my wife, I'm like, there will be a time where I will not be able to do this.
Yeah.
And she then just turned to me and she's like, then pack it in whilst you still can, right? And I'm just like, actually, that's exactly what needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
Is all these things that I think in our 30s we put to the side as like, I'll do it, I'll do it, when I have this, or I'll do it when that has happened. Now you get to a point where it's just like, actually, there's an urgency to doing them because you realize that you will not be able to move physically the same way that you do now,
Yeah.
right? And I think for me that's what it started. And I think some of the stats that are coming up is, in relation to what you were saying is, say 60% of men consider like career changes, and then 40% will take up new hobbies and interests, 25% engage in more physical fitness activities, and 15% make like drastic lifestyle changes. And that will be your sports car, traveling extensively, starting new relationships. Some homies resign and
get divorced.
And some get divorced, right?
Oh.
Because once again, it's that whole thing of, it's a new phase of my life, I must live it out, right? So those are the stats in terms of what it looks like globally and I guess in the country itself. But as you were speaking, I identified, because I'm under that whole, engage in more extreme physical activity
Stuff. Yeah.
right? I did high rocks, and then I saw there's another one called Deadly Dozens. I'm like, let's go do that one too.
Mhm.
And I'm like, let's do Iron Man, let's do this and that. And all that it is that thing of wanting to push the body to the highest, I guess, intensity, because at some point it disappears. And you can feel it some mornings, right? Where you wake up and you're just like, yo, I can't jump up. I'll take it nice and slow.
Yeah.
So now, instead of, if you need to be somewhere at 6:30, you must wake up at least 5:45.
Yeah.
For some people, 5:30, just to adjust the body, get it to stretch a bit, and be a functional human being, right? So you're learning that your body needs you to pay more attention.
Naturally, you're getting older
than previously, right?
Yeah.
Because as a young boy, we would party, man, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You wake up, you go to work, like nothing happened.
Yeah.
But now, if I pulled 2 nights without sleeping, the next 3 days are gone.
You're done.
Because recovery is non-existent, right? And maybe that's what happens to a lot of us, is that we realize these things. And I think for those with money, the cars become a way of doing it. The luxury goods become a way of showing that opulence, or the fact that I've arrived, right? And I was chatting to, I can't remember who I was chatting to, and we're having a whole conversation about the difference between, I guess, millennials, boomers, and Gen Zs, right? Is that historically, and maybe this is a context within spaces where there's excess. People bought Porsches when they retired. People bought Ferraris when they retired. And that's when they would spoil themselves at that level. But there's so little anticipation now, because we buy what we want when we want, and when we can afford it, right? If you have kids who are in their 20s, already driving the most expensive Porsche or a Ferrari or whatever it may be, and it's just like, what do they look forward to if they're given all of these things so early?
Yeah. So I think that's, it depends on the context, obviously,
Yeah.
like you said, but I think that's a function of, like, it's a function of how, like, your dice is rolled for you in your life, right? I'm not sure if it's as much to do with, like, the issue of midlife crisis, but where, like, I've seen, even in the stats, it'll say like, oh, okay, cool, most men start to question their lives at a certain stage, and some say 30, some say 40, some say 50, whatever. Then there's like behaviors that start to come out because you're asking all these questions, right? The thing that I keep thinking about is, I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, because it means you are reflective about where your life is and where your life is going, right? It would be worrisome for me to just continue. If guy was
living
like,
your best life,
you just don't care, like, you just continue, like, oh, okay, I'm 30, oh, okay, I'm 40 now, but I keep doing exactly the same things. So unfortunately, I think there's a positive spin to what's called midlife crisis.
Yeah.
The word crisis doesn't resonate as much for me, because it makes it seem like it's a problem. It's a crisis moment. But actually, I think it's a reflection moment. And I think most people should have that reflection moment you can either be a time thing, an age thing. It can be a milestone thing. Like, oh, I've reached these milestones that I've set for myself. What now? Or I've reached this age. What now? The crisis part of it for me is the how people deal with the moment. So in the moment, you're like, oh man, I'm about to
those
turn
impulsive
40.
decisions.
So as in bafethu.
Yeah.
Why? Like, you haven't lived the last 10 years like that. So why do you want to do it now? And you do it on the assumption that those things will make you happier,
Yes.
or they'll make you more fulfilled, which is why I was
Or
pushing.
they'll make you feel younger, right?
Well, yeah, okay. If that's important to you, if that's important to you.
If you think about humans in the 21st century, there's a massive obsession about being young, or staying young, or looking young.
For Ozempic.
Gidi Ozempic, Gidi Lipo, Gidi flying to Turkey for,
Yeah, again, I think
there's a number of things, right? But also that's a very small part of the population that does these type of behaviors. But I think for me, it once again goes back to that whole thing, Yauri. How do we, as a society, actually journey with people who are transitioning through seasons? And maybe that's the chat, right?
Yeah, and hold on, I'm sorry to cut you short, but I think it's important to note that, and to make it almost like acceptable for people to realize that, oh, I'm going through a change.
To take stock,
and for society to be like, yeah, that's why. You know what I mean? Like, you're going into a different phase of your life.
Yeah.
As opposed to, again, this term midlife crisis for me, and I'm not an expert, but like, it makes it seem like such a negative thing. When in fact, I believe if you encouraged people, and for the purpose of our show, men, to be like, you need to be reflective about where you're at in your life at specific moments. You can decide when those moments are, and help you with the tools of how to deal with that reflection or how to deal with that change, as opposed to saying, Lebogang is going through a midlife crisis. Look at him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's cool, because the behavior is probably masking something a lot more important, which is probably, I don't think I'm living out my purpose. So if I'm not living out my purpose and I'm getting older, naturally that's going to have a huge impact on me and what I think my legacy should be. And I'm going to feel like I've wasted my life up until now. And then next thing's like, oh my word, what do I need to do so that I don't commit suicide? Okay, let me go buy a new car. Okay, let me go to clubs now. Oh, let me take up sports. Yeah. Those things to me all seem like masking activities.
So what you're saying then is, I guess, the stigma to the term midlife crisis is largely of internal undealt with issues or challenges, or the reflection of what is happening internally, but expressed outwardly with lavish behavior or extravagant behavior, whatever it may be.
Extreme behavior.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that is where the stigma or about this term actually comes from, is that how men have, I guess, played out midlife crisis has not been in a contemplative, reflective, I am finding myself, I'm reorientating myself. It's been extreme, right? Mm-hmm. It's been the clubs, the drugs, the women, the cars, excessive physical activities.
Sometimes it becomes like some men find their spiritual selves at that point, but then they go extreme. Like, now,
that's the thing, right? Is whatever it is that is chosen at that point in time, people become extreme, right? It's like a new convert to any religion. Those first few years of them converting, they are super and uber extreme, right? And they do everything to the highest level that they can think of. And I think maybe that is where the societal response and even the title of crisis comes from, right? And maybe what we then need to look at is how are we then dealing with that moment of a change of season? Because I mean, when I chatted with the bishop, and I keep bringing him up because this is a chat we had this past week. And one of his first things was that it's a good thing that you're there. It's like, that's a beautiful place to be in, because it means you're taking stock, right? Yeah. You're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what nourishes you both spiritually and otherwise. You're thinking about your happiness. You're thinking about Am I fulfilled in this life, right? Does my job fulfill me?
Mm-hmm.
Does my family fulfill me, right? And he's like, that's a good place to be. But whilst you're there, don't get caught up in just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Live
Yeah.
and be present. Share yourself. Keep moving. Keep doing the things that energize you, right?
Mm.
And I think that's a conversation that, for me, we don't entirely engage in a society because, once again, older men aren't chatting to younger men, right? And it goes back to what we constantly say is part of the reason why Mxnzplain exists is that there needs to be a sharing of wisdom of men in their 50s with 40-year-old men, a sharing of wisdom of 40-year-old men with 30-year-old men,
Yeah.
and scale it down, right? Because we go through, like what I'm going through right now in my mind, it's not new.
Of course not.
There's a bunch of men who've gone through this, right? But including my uncles.
Yeah.
But I don't think at any point they felt it necessary to sit and chat through it, right?
Yeah.
Because we overlook that, and I think that is the thing, is like, who journeys with men as they transition, right? When a girl child gets their first period, mom or nkoko or mamkholo, whoever the female is in the family, will sit the girl down and then explain to them what is happening to them physically, right? When boys get their first wet dream, no one takes us through that thing, right? No one, right?
Wakang.
Yeah, no, literally, because that's you think like you've done something wrong, right? And I remember my experience was, I woke up and my pants were wet, my bed was wet, and I was like, did I pee? It's like, no, man, this thing is sticky, right? And immediately you're like, crap, what's happening?
What have I done? Yeah.
Think I took my sheets, took my pants, rolled them up, hit them. I didn't even know what happened to those pants, bro, because I never saw them again. I probably threw them away. I never wore them again because it felt like such a shameful moment
Yeah.
that had happened. But then, as you do biology, and when you get to high school and you start doing biology, you realize, actually, that's a natural process.
It's natural. Look, I think the thing that, at least I'm getting from this conversation, and I'm going to be repeating myself again, is that these are like different stages
Yeah.
of life. And it almost seems like there isn't a deliberate process of like, okay, gents, arguing about
Yeah.
what's happening in this next stage.
How we're
of life.
transitioning.
So you made the example of like 50-year-olds need to talk to 40-year-olds, blah, blah, blah. But remember, and they're not. No?
Yeah.
But remember, no one spoke to them
Yes.
either. No one spoke to them about like, oh, okay, I want to manage. Here's what's happening, blah, 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 blah. Which is why I think one of the things we don't realize about losing some of our cultural practices
Initiation.
as Black people is those moments were embedded or are embedded in some of our cultural practices. This is like, no, ingane yenzelwa imbeleko ngesikhathi esingaka. How it's when you're about to, before you get married,
before you turn 18, ka Setswana or Basotho ya lebollong. Xhosa people call it yentabeni, right? And all of that, those are moments, key moments and milestones of helping young boys transition into manhood.
No, yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is, I'm sure somewhere in our cultural practices there is a thing to deal with midlife crisis, but because
Yes.
in the main part, it's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Just the simple thing of like, okay, amadoda bawahamba yohlala wonke ngesikhathi esingakanani. Like at some point, men would go and chill just by themselves and speak to each other. It's like the seniors will speak to the juniors.
Yeah.
And there's always a senior, right? There's some guys like 70, 80 speaking to the 50-year-olds. This is the story now. This is how we build this community. This is how we do that. And I think that is one of the tools and ways that we can use to help men with midlife crises, because, or with whatever that you want to call this thing now, because you can't leave people to themselves, right? And you also can't leave us to our own devices right now, especially if we're all dealing with it in the same way. Like, oh, okay, time for Kabelo's midlife crisis. Okay, gents.
Scooter, Koloi, Iron Man.
No, you can't, right? And there shouldn't be we should do our best to reduce the quote unquote shame around that, which is why it's so important for dudes to speak to each other, right? Because maybe you feel, especially I can imagine it today, right? Oh, I'm about to turn 40. Oh, I'm about to turn 45. Man, look at my friends who are 45. What have they done?
Yeah.
Look at my friends who are 40. Look at what their lives look like. My life doesn't look anything like that. Oh man, look at, like, then it becomes a comparative thing as opposed to a thing of like, what's happening with me inside and I really think now that we're having this conversation that it has a lot to do with, am I living the life of purpose that I'm meant to live? But as Majida, you don't sit and discuss purpose. So when I saw Atiam, I mean, Trevor's not gonna be like, hey, lives a purpose, no. But I think we should be doing that, because then you build better dudes, better men, better situations, and you actually lead to dealing with this potential crisis in a much better way, right? Because it then becomes, it's normal. Oh, my friends have gone through this, my brothers have gone through this, my mentor has gone through, let me go talk to them. Right? But if you don't have those structures, then you're literally like, you're on your own.
But also I think for me, once again, it speaks back to how many of us have the confidence of reaching out to an elderly man in our community or leader and say, yo, man, I'm struggling. I think this is the phase that I'm finding myself. Like, how do I navigate this? Right.
Yeah.
And I think even with me, the conversation with me and the Bishop Moreo came from exactly that, where I reached out to him. I'm like, as my spiritual leader within the church, I'm struggling and I don't want to fail at this. Right. I don't want to fail in my ministry. I don't want to fail in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I feel like something is breaking or something is moving and I'm not sure how to manage it. Right. And literally we sat and had a whole 2-hour session chatting about this. Right. And I think it's a privilege for me to have an elder like him who's in his mid-60s willing to sit and chat to me about this moment, this season in my life.
Not everyone has that, bro.
And that's the thing, is that that's a luxury. Right? It's not many kids or men actually, kokasi, can walk up to a 65-year-old man and say, hey, that this mang I'm struggling. Or I'm going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that person is willing to chat to you. Right.
So how do we fix that?
For me, it starts right here, because I think in my mind, this very conversation that we're having is sparking that question in somebody's mind to say, actually, who is the elderly or who's the older man or more mature gentleman in my life that I look up to, who I can speak to about my journey and my process and how I'm feeling, right? And not be judged or challenged in any way, right? And I think what I didn't expect to come out from my conversation, Linda Domreo, was that at the end of our chat, I randomly said to him, okay, I think you're going to be my spiritual director. And he was like, yeah, sure, but under one condition. I'm going to journey with you to the same extent that you're going to journey with me. And he's like, this is a two-way thing.
What does that mean?
And in the sense, as much as he will help me and journey with me spiritually, in the sense of, if I have questions or I'm unsettled about something, be it in my marriage, in my life, or whatever it may be, as my spiritual director, this is the person I would go to chat and reflect about these things. It's almost like a psychologist, but their task is very different from a psychologist, right? It's not a whole clinical process. It's really about being able to say anything and everything without rules or judgment around it, right? And I guess expecting the most raw truth behind it, right? It's like when me and you have some of our chats, there are moments that are quite blunt, right? And straightforward to say, yo, man, you're messing up, right? And there's no cutifying it. Because remember, psychologists can't respond to anything ethically, right? They can help you navigate and paint some scenarios, but they actually can't give you answers. Whereas a spiritual director can throw questions and challenge you and reflect with you. So you journey together.
We should find a way to replicate that spiritual director thing for people who are not in kind of your space, right? Like that. And I don't know how we do that, so maybe that's something we must think about. But the encouragement I want to try and give to everyone who's watching this is, gents, again, let's talk to each other. Again, it is normal and it is natural to have this moment in your life where you feel like, ish, kwenzakala, and it can be driven by age, it can be driven by circumstance, it can be driven by whatever, right? What's not cool is to feel and think that you are alone,
Yeah.
and therefore make decisions for things that are just actually going to make things worse, right? And look, I guess I'm saying that let's find a way to make something happen. I don't know how we're going to do that, but hit us up on the comments if you got some comments. Can do that, But seriously, like, how do we? Because I think it's a serious thing to deal with. If you look at the stats around suicide of men, in particular black men, it starts to happen around this, like this life stage, 30s, 40s, where it's men beginning to feel incredibly helpless because at that point of life there isn't much support. Right? Anyway, so let's you and I talk about this and see if we can actually come up with something.
Yeah, and I think for me, just to echo what you're saying is, to all the gents, like, I think for me, it's that realization that everything I'm going through right now, majority of the men who are older than me within my church, at work, in my community, have gone through similar experiences.
On your podcast,
and realized that actually, one, I'm not the only one. Two, I'm not the first man to go through this. Three, I live in the 21st century, right? A time when men are actually encouraged to speak about their challenges. We're encouraged to really come out and say, this is where I'm struggling. This is where I feel weak. These are the things that I need to change, or I would love to change about me. And sometimes just allow somebody to, I guess, reflect your life towards you as you share what you're journeying through. And I think that soundboard is a very important thing to growth and to really becoming a good human being. And I can't remember who I was listening to, and they were saying, going through moments of crisis is how we learn. It's how we learn and how we grow up, because that's how we learn emotional stability. That's how we learn problem solving. If you never go through a moment of crisis or a moment of what's happening here and you have to reevaluate, you don't grow. And so these moments are actually key, because this is where your real power comes from, is that you're always given an opportunity to just step up, to elevate, to do better, to get the type of resources around you. And I think one of the things that we're thinking or praying to do this year is we would like to have a gathering. We would like to meet some of you gents, and we're hoping sometime in June we will give the time and the venue. And let's have as many of you as possible to just come through and let's share on that day and be in conversation. Just set up some time for men to just chat. No judgment, no rules, but a very simple one is come as you are, vulnerable, honest, and open, but also come and meet someone who could potentially be the person or the gent that you journey with. This is Mxnzplain. I'm Kabelo Motlhakane, and today we looked at, I guess, men and the seasons that we go through, or transitioning, or what you want to call a midlife crisis. And we really hope that whatever journey or part of the journey that you find yourself in, that there's at least one or two people, men specifically, that you can chat to and reflect with. This is Mxnzplain. That's for me, for you. It's about us.
Pieces. I'm Lebo and Kabelo. Mxnzplain.
Awe.
Good one.